If I disappear below the ledge, you'll know what happened.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Moscow Public Works Finance Committee meeting for Monday, March 11th, 2019. First item of business on the agenda is approval of the Public Works Finance Committee February 25th, 2019 minutes. Any additions or corrections to the minutes, anyone?
Look good to me.
Look good.
I will say we'll approve them as presented then. Item number 2 is a disbursement report for February 2019. Sarah Banks will tell us what's going on with spending money.
Yep. Good afternoon. Looking at major expenditures for month end February 28th, 2019, they totaled $2,455,615. Our largest expenditure, as usual, is payroll, $1,117,488. To point out a few of the expenditures, we had our state insurance fund payment for workers' comp, which was $169,070. We also paid our HRA VIBA Trust contribution to employees, our annual payment. That came in at $56,916. And then we also did our second quarter payment to Whitcomb for our dispatch services. That was $140,428.
Okay. Is anything out of whack there? Anybody else have any comments or?
I didn't see anything out of whack. All the usuals, plus a few that we'd already anticipated popped up.
Right.
I didn't see anything that looked weird on the
Just no.
regular disbursement report. So I guess we'll move to approve that and
Okay.
pass it around for signatures.
Thank you.
You want to swing into the next item?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
While we're signing that off, the third item on today's agenda is fourth quarter financial report from July 1, 2018 to September 30th, 2018 for fiscal year 2018.
Yep, so looking at fourth quarter in total, we came in at 62% of revenues and about 60% of expenditures. The two largest maybe anomalies to point out would probably be within the general fund. And looking at capital outlay, we came in at about 140%, and that was because of our SCBA purchase for the fire equipment and related equipment to that. And then also the transfer into capital for unanticipated fund balance.
Well, we got a good close look at SCBA's this weekend, and
Seemed to work.
yeah, I can see where they're essential for the survival of a fireman in a fire, so I think that was a good expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the used equipment that we gave to the Clearwater Fire Department, I think they've picked that up and are very appreciative, since they had no breathing apparatus at all in that fire department, so.
As a matter of fact,
Wow.
we've currently got our fire engine that was surplus because of the purchase of the fire engine that was delivered last June. We've got it listed on consignment, and the chief is watching that to see what the possibilities of selling that are. If not, then we'll probably be back in front of you to try and dispose of that perhaps to another department at some reduced rate if we can't recover any funds out of it.
Okay, thanks for that update. Okay, so that's all you wanted to say about the fourth quarter financial report?
That is, unless you
Okay.
have something that you'd like to ask.
I didn't see anything that looked out of whack on that either, so I would move that we approve that as presented as well.
Do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You, Sarah. Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Item number 4 on today's agenda is the Lola Clyde Park Playground Equipment Selection, and David Schott's going to tell us what's going on with that.
Good afternoon, and thank you. So this is Lola Clyde Playground Equipment Selection. And, excuse me real quick.
Isn't technology great when it works?
Is it turned on, David?
Yeah. Yeah, I got that part.
blue screen of death.
It is.
You may have to talk from the podium and use the up and down arrows, David.
Excuse me, I'll present from the podium.
Okay.
So again, this is Lola Clyde Park Playground Equipment Selection.
It's not working either.
Nope.
I'm sure Zach will get to the bottom of this.
He
pretty
will.
quick.
Just when you count on them, they betray you.
Yes, technology is a great thing when it works. Perfect.
For whatever reason that works there.
Thank you, Zach.
He's back.
Third time's a charm. So Lola Clyde Park is located on Polk Avenue and Rodeo Drive. It's approximately 5.1 acres. The conceptual plan was approved in 2016. We're requesting authorization to purchase playground equipment from Buell Recreation. They supply Burke equipment at a cost of $123,541. We're also requesting $3,000 for the parks crews to install the playground equipment and the rubber safety tiles as part of this. So the funding source is the Hamilton Fund. A little background: on January 7th of this year, we issued a request for proposals to 18 playground suppliers. We listed a budget of $125,000. The focus of this playground is a 2 to 12-year-old playground, focusing on children with disabilities, as well as provide high play value for all kids. We did receive 12 responsive proposals. I would note that we allowed suppliers to submit up to 2 proposals, each a separate proposal. We did get 9 suppliers to put in for a total of 12 proposals. We opened up public voting on January 30th. This closed on February 25th. We received a staggering 714 total votes, 307 online, 407 paper votes at the Hamilton Indoor Recreation Center and the Youth Egan Youth Center, excuse me. That's the most votes I've seen since I've been here about 3 years, so it was a good turnout. So, this was the ranked results. Burke ranked number 1 with 159 of the total votes. They also ranked number 2nd, and as it played out through all the submissions. This is just their conceptual plan of the playground equipment. I'd like to highlight a couple of features. It'll have swings for the 5 to 12-year-old age group, the 2 to 5-year-olds, and then it'll have 2 inclusive swings. Those would be 1 swing each for each age class. Where I'd like to note here is the ramp system. Typically, we don't see the ramps in our playgrounds we've installed in the past. Nationally, all our playgrounds in a commercial setting are ADA compliant. This really goes beyond compliant. There's not a transfer station where a child with a disability in a chair would have to transfer out of the wheelchair onto a platform to access the structure. Here, the chair can go right up into the structure. So, just a schematic with the different use zones, kind of a different angle of it. With that, we're asking for approval to move forward with this in the amount of $123,541. With that, I'd be happy to take any comments or answer any questions.
How's the balance of the Hamilton after this?
That's a very good question, Councilor Bedke.
We have approximately, and I don't have the exact number in front of me, but approximately $2 million for the council's resolution to utilize the funding for accessible pathways and playgrounds for parks. There's also the $1 million that council earmarked in resolution for the potential participation in the ice rink facility should they meet the conditions of that resolution as well.
So it sounds like things are going pretty much as planned. Parks are getting developed and opened, and so I see no reason not to go forward with this.
Okay.
I don't have an objection to it. I think it's great that we had such a high response on voting on the design, and we will be installing this in-house, correct?
Correct.
That's the entirety of it. Yeah, which will save us a pretty good chunk of money, I would guess, huh?
Yeah, I think last park we did, we saved about $15,000, so it's a good chunk of change.
I noticed in the financials that also the Hamilton Fund got a pretty substantial return on investment last month. There was several $1,000s of investment income from that. So that's good. Let's make it last longer. Yeah, that's good.
David, do you have an estimate on what we'll save doing this in-house for this project?
I'm sorry, one more
Do you have
time?
an estimate for what we'll save doing this project in-house as opposed to going out?
Put an estimate together specifically for this project. We're somewhere around 30% generally on these parks.
great.
So, yeah, it's been a good thing. We've sent some of our parks crew off to get certified to keep the warranties on the playground equipment and install. They enjoy doing it. They're starting to get pretty good at it. We've been doing a few of these over the past couple of years. So,
I commend you all on the effort to be inclusive too. I think that's really exciting in the design.
thank you.
Consent agenda, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, for the presentation. Item number 5 on today's agenda is a request for funding from Moscow Affordable Housing Trust. Gary's going to present
Okay.
that, and Mr. Peterson's going to come and give us a little background if
bet.
necessary.
Okay. What you have in your packet is a letter from Nils as the Executive Director of the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust. I'll leave him to explain the project. You'll notice that if the council decides to move forward with this and fund it, there is $20,000 budgeted in city council non-prioritized projects. This would utilize about $15,000 of that. Council did approve $6,000 for the security cameras for Sojourners Alliance, which was approved last budget, and the request did not come in until this budget. So the funds that were budgeted last year were actually paid out this year. So that budget will overrun, and as council was advised at that time, if the council decides to spend the additional capacity of $20,000, that line item will overrun by the $6,000 that was carried over, if you will, from last year. Also, I sent out this afternoon some comments from the Moscow's comp plan regarding affordable housing. By way of history, council in the past, and not for the past 4 or 5 years, but council had previously budgeted $20,000 per year, which was a match, I believe, for funding that Carl Johnson had committed to the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust. And that was utilized about 4 years ago, if I recall. But there's been no opportunity or request from Moscow Affordable Housing Trust since, although there have been several pieces of property that Nils has looked at, owned by the city, and we've been working on that various and sundry times. Property behind Rosars that was purchased for the old railroad right-of-way was a potential. So looked at a bunch of those things as well. So this is an opportunity for the council to participate if it so desires. I would note, and as Nils will talk about in a few minutes, I'm sure, there are building permit revenues that are being generated from the 3 townhouse project that Moscow Affordable Housing Trust is building on Southview at this time. One of the things that we had talked about is, would the council use that as a support for this request for $15,000? If that was the case, then of course we've estimated about $3,000 per townhouse as being the general fund building permit revenues. So that would be about $9,000 worth of revenues off the affordable housing project. So with that background, I'll leave it to Nils to make his case.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. I want to work on 2 ideas. The first is, while the Daily News struggled to define affordable housing, I have no problem. The feds say it's when a person pays 30% of their income for their housing cost. And the demographic that we're interested in is those who earn 80% of the area median income and less. And from a practical standpoint, it's probably down to from 80 to 60. What I carry in my head is a family of 4 earning $54,000 a year is at that 80% demographic. and a family of 3 earning 48,000. And when I see those numbers, I say, geez, there's a lot of jobs in Moscow that don't even pay that much. So these are my friends and neighbors, and they're working full-time jobs, and often I think, I'm not confident of this yet, I don't have enough data, I think they're single-headed households, probably woman-headed households, but that have one good solid job and earn in that range, somewhere under 54,000, down to 40, 38, somewhere in there. Okay, so if we understand we're talking about those folks, here's my assertion in point number 1. There is no house that is affordable to them that they could own without a subsidy. You look in the Sunday supplement and you see numbers that start at 2 1/4 and they go to numbers I can't even spell, you know? I mean, they just go way up there. There's 3 ways to give a subsidy. And I finally got clear on this when I got all the same language. Subsidy given away. It's a grant. And the banks do it, and they call it down payment assistance. It's great for wealth building. Here, like $5,000, here's $5,000, go buy a house. Subsidy returned, that's what the Housing Trust has been doing. Would you like to buy a house? Great, let us loan you $15,000. No interest, no payments. When you're done with the house, give us back the $15,000. Now, that may be 10 years from now. That $15,000 won't be worth nearly what it was when it was used the first time, but at least it comes back. It's not given away, it's returned. Subsidy retained. Subsidy retained is the idea that let me help you, and in this case using the land trust model, I'll own the land. You don't have to buy that. You just buy the building sitting on top of it. When it comes time to sell, you just sell the building on top of it, and the land will stay in my ownership out of the equation. The advantage of subsidy retained is long-term affordability. Subsidy returned, the middle one, works for one transaction, and then we have to start over and do a next transaction, get the federal money back here and do it again. With subsidy retained, we can hold the subsidy from the feds in the ground in perpetuity. So we have the best chance of long-term affordability from transaction to transaction to transaction. So when the land trust was originally created, it was created with the vision of doing that model. It has taken until now to be able to say to you, I think we're about to start. IHFA changed its rules, and its new rules allow us to do land trust activities. They're still scrambling in Boise to figure out what they just agreed to, but they initiated it. I'm just going to pursue it. Their requirement on us was to own the land outright to go into the deal, and then they will loan for the construction, and then in the payback, when the person buys the construction, they'll they'll lower the cost to the buyer further with the subsidy and roll that into a debt that we have, a non-payable debt that, well, payable ultimately, but no interest, no payments. So that when you think of it, here's the fair market value, start with that. We think these townhouses are going to be at $215. Subtract the value of the land, we think it'll be around 30. Subtract another 40 that IHFA is putting on the table. So now we're down $70,000 from 215, about a third off. We're down in the 140, 150 range. For 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1-car garage, brand new house. That's the goal. And then that price, whatever it is, inflates slowly, but it doesn't yo-yo with the market. We control that so that there is wealth appreciation for the owner, but they never sell the value of our land. And they're required to sell to another buyer who is also income qualified. So we keep it in the audience that we wish. That was point 1, land trust. Point 2, good stewardship. When the council provided the $20,000 in, I want to say 16, we used it to buy a piece of land, 306 Morton Street. It was it was a second lot, a house on 2 lots, and we were able to purchase 1 lot. It's a small lot. We built a house using IHFA funds. We sold that house. I am not the detailed accountant guy. I'm the back of the envelope. My wife keeps the books at home. My accountant keeps the books at work. I just knew that the money in the bank was going up. When I finally saw the results, the $20,000 the city plus some grant money, we ended up with $35,000 in the bank. So we returned your money to use in the next project, and we have used it now as part of the money that purchased the Southview lots. We purchased 1 large lot, divided it into thirds. You've seen that come through. And now we have the still contingent award from IHFA for, was it $640,000 to build the building. So all those pieces are just rolling straight ahead. My request was to come in and see whether $5,000 a lot, you would help us out with a little bit more funds, which I think we can steward well for you.
Okay, going back to point 1.
Yes.
The question that comes to my mind is, if I'm a home buyer and I'm buying a building on someone else's land, there has to be some sort of a long-term situation where I can't be forced to move my building off of your land because you don't like me anymore.
Correct.
Right? So what's built into that to
The-
prevent that?
The term is called a ground lease. I will lease the ground to the homeowner. The term of the lease is 99 years.
Okay.
The term is picked to make bankers comfortable. They want to know that there's lots of time for paying off the mortgage and refinances and paying off all of that stuff, right? And it's that document that sets out the various terms of our relationship, including the terms related to sale to another income qualified buyer, sale at a price that controls for not selling the value of my land, et cetera. So is a national organization, it's called Grounded Solutions, of land trusts. Land trust activities have been going on for at least 20 years in the U.S. And they provide a model lease that they have over time encountered the issues and describe this. And it's a menu, choose A or B on this and B or C on this and da-da-da. IHFA is taking that document and making it the Idaho way in terms of also addressing the issues related to the home funds that are federal home funds that are coming in. So we will have a document that has a national approved pedigree and Idaho tweaked variety, and we will use that as the relationship between the land and the owner.
So that it would be a situation where the owner wouldn't have to worry about, and since the lease is probably longer than their lifespan, they're not going to have to worry about being evicted from the land because somebody wants to, because the land trust gets dissolved and the new owner wants to build a McDonald's there and gets your house off my land.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay.
The question of the longevity of the organization is an interesting one. We have set these lots up so that they could be sold fee simple. Each one has its own sewer connection, each one has its own connection to the street, da-da-da-da-da. No future zoning or planning question of dividing this property. And the strategy behind that was, should the trust unravel, the most direct thing would be to transfer the land to the owner of the building and be done. They would then own the whole thing, ground to sky, fee simple. We're not anticipating that, but we're laying out the conditions for it, as opposed to, here's a funky thing that we set up, and now we unraveled, and who gets to solve the funkiness?
Yeah, if it seems to me, if you're a lower income person and you're investing in this, it's probably one of the biggest investments you're ever going to make in your life. And so you don't want it to be
a good one, safe one.
Yeah, you don't want somebody yanked the rug out from under you. That's
Exactly.
as long as those things have been considered, because I think it shrinks the pool of people who are interested when you if they're risk averse and they see that risk.
And they
So-
see it as a risk,
Yeah.
right. Let me say one other thing about the lease. We anticipate that the lease rate will be $50 a month. So unlike a trailer park where the lease space might be hundreds of dollars, this is not a return on our investment so much as enough to keep our hand in the game in terms of
Deal with the-
maintaining the lease and da-da-da, right.
Right.
Because if we raise the rent, it becomes unaffordable again, so that's not our goal.
Randy Bokel from the Fair and Affordable Housing Commission is here to, I don't know if you want to address the committee?
Yeah, we'd love to have you come sit at the table and
I just came
Speak,
in
Randy.
attendance today to support Nils in his request for this. Golly, the price, the cost of home ownership has far outpaced the rising cost or the rising income levels of a lot of the population, and searching for and finding unique and innovative ways of financing or assisting people to finance their future home ownership, I think is just a marvelous idea. And our commission fully supports and encourages city council to adopt this approach and accept this request.
Okay, thank you. Art?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking that it seems two things. One is it depletes the entire legislative contingency fund for the year and then some. And so if anything else comes along, it doesn't get to happen. Two, with the previous investment in the Morton Street house, it's being rolled over into this project, plus 15,000. It seems like the city is getting further and further into the land acquisition business, as it were, and that discomforts me a little bit, especially in terms of longevity of the housing people, the affordable housing group, and just investing the city's money, and if you guys evaporate, then the city's money goes right back to the homeowners, which is not a terrible thing. It's kind of Merry Christmas, but that worries me a little bit too about how often the city needs to get involved with providing money for these purposes. I'm not against it per se, it's just kind of how far down the road do we go? So I'm trying to balance these various thoughts about, is this wise and proper use of the taxpayers' money to invest in this? Probably, because we have a lack of affordable housing. Is this a model that is really sustainable, or is this going to be now sunk into this land, and for the next project for the affordable housing people, are you going to be coming back again for land acquisition to provide more affordable housing? Can we afford to keep doing that?
I'll let Gary address the first part and say that in effect, the 20 that you put into Morton Street came back out. And yeah, it's true, we sold that fee simple, and that's part of how it came back out. We have been approved by an organization called Community Frameworks that runs the SHOP federal funds in our region. SHOP is Self-Help Ownership Program. And it acts in two interesting ways. SHOP will provide $15,000 towards the land per lot, which is capital for real estate, is a hard grant ask. People in paint and whatnot is a relatively easy grant ask, but many grants say they won't give for just a capital campaign. SHOP funds, well, let's start. The land cost us $78,000 plus several thousand in engineering to get it divided. So we're close to $30,000 a lot when it's all done. If we track nominally the 20 from Morton Street, and say that actually all came back and is going in here. And the 15 requested, that's 35, and then the 45 of shop, that pays for it or a little bit over the top. And lets us, right now, we're fully in. The city's, not only the city's money that is, it was in our bank account, plus all the other income we had earned over every activity. We're right up to there in that land. So one way to think of it is it's going in the land. The other way to think of it is it's giving us working capital to work on this project and the next project. We earn a development fee. We sell the project at cost, but then IHFA pays us, much like indirect costs in a grant, they pay us a development fee after the fact for demonstrating our success. And so we get some money that's unencumbered that we roll into the next project, but we don't have that now. So,
Okay, so there is some money come back, so the end of this project does not leave the trust bereft of anything except coming back and asking again.
right, I think if you invite me back in a year, I'll tell you I got your 15 and I got something more. And maybe I'll tell you I got your 15, your 20 and something more. Yeah, it's, I think we're able to,
Yes.
I mean, there's a risk in this business, but I think we'll get it back.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow the various threads here about exactly where does the money wind up,
Right.
you know, tied up in land versus rolling over and things like that, because I would much prefer to have some monies coming back out to roll over to finance future.
Future
affordable
projects, I
housing
agree.
Projects, yeah,
I agree.
so.
As you sell the 3 townhouses, is there a return to the trust on from those properties? Or let's say you sell all 3 of them and 2 years from now, somebody sells one of those to someone else, is there any sort of return to the trust
So-
from that?
When we sell, it will be effectively at cost. The transaction itself won't produce an income. But the fact that we sell will cause IHFA to give us the developer fee, a reward for our success. So the
there's
profit
some
is
margin
there,
there.
but it's not in the sale itself. If it was in the sale, it would be against the buyer,
Right.
which is, again, what we're trying to avoid. So they pay this in grant terms as an indirect cost on the side. So there will be some gain to the trust. Larger organizations operate on it. They turn over enough buildings, they're just making money on these developer fees, and they operate their organization with it. We have been using the Choto operating grant to operate the organization. So when that additional money comes in, it's unencumbered cash that we can use as capital for another project. Subsequent sales, we will not gain anything from. We'll simply be there ensuring that the price that it's sold for is one that will keep it affordable. If we were to gain, again, that would work against some future buyers.
Yeah, but you do get the development.
We get the
fee.
developer
So
fee.
There is that.
Right.
So he wanted you to
Well,
fill
there
in
was
some-
the 20,000 and it'll be exhausted and that
Is that what you want to
conversation.
talk? Yeah, I have a question about that too. We allocated from the legislative funds, 6,000 for the camera system for sojourners, and then, but that was from the previous year's budget, but it didn't get spent in that year. So the expense rolled over, but not the funds?
Yeah, what happened was we had advised sojourners that council was willing to go ahead and fund $6,000. And they did not get their request in before the end of the year, or the end of the budget year. So it came in afterwards. We came to council and said, hey, this is what's going on. Was advised at that time that council still wanted to honor the $6,000, but that can't remember if we specifically asked for authorization to overrun that line item, but the discussion was had at council that you didn't want to deplete the $20,000 authority that you'd given yourselves in the FY19 budget. Already $6,000 of an obligation before. So essentially what we'll do when we open the budget in August, we will ask the council to appropriate that $6,000, so it will add to the $20,000 that council authorized in the FY19 budget.
So when all the accounting's done, if we would approve this $15,000 request, it would leave us with $5,000
Essentially, yes.
to continue this year. So
After
I
the
just wanted
budget's
that to be
opened up
clear,
and
yeah.
approved.
that we aren't worse than broke if we
Yeah.
do that, right?
And then I don't know how you actually internally think about the building permit fees as repaying anything or not.
Yeah, and that, as I said at the beginning, the original proposal was that we could waive the building permit fees in support of the project. For whatever reason, that's not possible, at least under what we've got going at this time. So as I advised Nils, what we would have to do is go ahead, make the request to council. He would have to make the request for council, and the only place we don't even have a line item for affordable housing. We have one for the Affordable Housing Commission, but not for affordable housing participation. So the logical place would be from council non-prioritized projects. Now, practically speaking, if council thought that was a good idea, you can look at that $3,000 per townhouse income, permit income, as offsetting from a practical sense, the $15,000. So 9,000 of the
It's only
15.
$6,000.
But still, for our purposes and budgeting purposes, it's a direct request for non-prioritized project funding.
Gary, when you say it's not possible to waive those fees, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's not possible, I shouldn't say it's not possible as much as the request wasn't made to go ahead and do that. So we don't have a program for that now. We could have brought that directly to you as a direct waiver, but we have no policy on that we could support that coming into council. Additionally, because of the way that the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust is utilizing the financing of IHFA, the shop funds, and those sorts of things, there's some reimbursement issues with paying for the permits and then getting reimbursed for the permits through another program. So that wouldn't get Moscow Affordable Housing Trust where they needed to be either.
It's a shell game.
Well, kind of, I mean, it's more of an accounting thing than anything else. What pocket, it's coming out of one pocket in the same pair of pants and going in another one.
But my request would not be to have it waived. Have the contractor pay it. Have IHFA reimburse the contractor. And then have the city give me money. Otherwise, I won't get it. If they just reduce it, then the contractor will pay less and IHFA will reimburse less. And who saves? IHFA.
Yeah.
It's not my
Yeah,
goal.
I see what you, yeah.
So this was a strategy in my mind to bring money onto my side of the line and let them just act normally on their side of the line.
Yeah, if I can expound a little bit, Nils' proposal at one time was council could rebate that once it was already paid. Well, we have no mechanism for doing that. It wasn't appropriated. So this is the way to go ahead and do. Essentially, for our accounting purposes and our budgeting purposes, this is the way to get it done, if the council wants to do it. But it's total discretionary. Non-prioritized projects, as you know, is money the council puts away for things they had not anticipated. This request didn't come up in the normal budget process, which is why you didn't consider it in the budget itself.
And to be clear, this is the moment where you will transition into being a land trust.
That is our goal, yes. We applied for the funds from IHFA to be a land trust. They have yet to get through all of their conditional stuff, but I expect that's the outcome.
I think that's really exciting, and I think that's a really big step in terms of long-term affordable housing solutions for Moscow. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to invest in that, especially after the $10,000 commitment for the study. And so I'm in support of this proposal.
Yeah, I think so too, and I'm substantially relieved to hear that there is some residual developer money coming back that can be used to continue the projects in affordable housing, because for sure we need it in town. It's just the convoluted threads of financing that exist. But yeah, well, when all things are said and done, I'm supportive of this proposal.
Yeah, I think the net outlay is substantially less than it appears when you consider the permitting fee and everything. So I'm in support of it. The other question I have for you is, not too long ago, you started a GoFundMe kind of thing for capital to buy land for the land trust on Facebook. And
I
don't know where
attempted
else
that
you-
on Facebook. We
Yeah,
got
and I don't know
60
where
bucks.
that.
But that's the goal. I mean, it's the same problem. I need to capitalize the organization. I said this to my board at December, and one of them said, well, what do you need? I said, I'll start with 100,000, but I need $1 million. Because you got to buy this land, you got to hold this land. And figuring out how to do that is the trick. And that GoFundMe wasn't the answer.
So my contribution didn't really buy much.
Thank
huh?
you. It didn't buy, it bought, at $10 a square foot, it bought some land, just
Yeah.
not much land.
Do you have to pay property taxes on that land? Or
That's
is
a
that?
brilliant question, and I think the answer is no, but I'm still at the mercy of the county commissioners. My counterpart in Sun Valley says you take a trip to the county and you say, this is like motherhood and apple pie, and there's actually some legislative category that they can say, yes, we can waive this because it's a nonprofit, because it's a goal that we have about affordability, et cetera. So in that county, she's not paying tax.
If I may, that is for the land itself that's held
For
in
the
the
land.
land trust. The
Correct.
improvements, the
Owner will pay on
owner
those.
pays like you did for
But the assessment would be on the value of the building, not the land.
And because it's owner occupied, then you take off the homeowner's exemption. So it gets the relatively inexpensive taxes.
I see Gina Terusio in the audience. Do you have anything to add to this? I know you've had some work on the affordable housing thing and nothing currently? Okay. Yeah, I think the three of us are in support of this and would forward it to council with that recommendation.
And my suggestion is regular council, since you're using non-prioritized funds.
Yeah, I think it should be presented to the entire council, plus it's an opportunity for more public awareness of
More
the
TV
project.
time for me.
Exactly. Governtainment, that's what we're all about here in council.
So next Monday.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you for your work on this.
I have nothing further, sir.
There's nothing further on the agenda, so I will move to approve.
Let's go.
An adjournment. Yes. Okay, there we go.
Shut down the cameras.